Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the program today, a woman who knows more about taxes than anyone. Randi Thompson has the rundown.
Coming up next, Scott Craigie and Sam will talk with Carole Vilardo, the queen of the calculator, also known as the president of the Nevada Taxpayers Association.
And coming up on the Power Pundit panel today, Chris Wicker, Wayne Frediani, and Fred Lokken. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
Here at the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, water resources come from fresh, clean groundwater, approved by state permits. The water is pumped from wells to million-gallon storage tanks and then distributed to TRI companies. Another amenity is our investment in a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant. This disposal system converts waste to clean water for industrial applications. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevada.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
Nevada Newsmakers is sponsored in part by the Nevada Beer Wholesalers Association.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by Employer Links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer Links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and Social Security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seem to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? They do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And we welcome to the program one of our favorite guests, Carole Vilardo, president of the Nevada Taxpayers Association. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, it seems like a good day, 4th of July, to talk about taxpayer revolts, and we're going to have a Boston Tea Party in the next election. We've got Tabor that looks like it's up, and Prop 13 may come back. Both of those, Tabor's a spending limitation cap system, and Prop 13, of course, is a property tax limitation. Are we looking at another round of tax revolts? Are those going to be acceptable kinds of programs for voters?
I think Tabor probably is, but I have hopes that when Tabor is written, and it's going to be an initiative, obviously, from what I understand, that it will be written so that it's logical. You know, there's nothing wrong with expenditure caps if they don't try to crucify you, and you can do them. They have been done. They've been done successfully. Colorado had a couple of problems with Tabor, but it was because of what Tabor lacked.
Let's explain just briefly. This is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights that passed in Colorado.
That is correct. Well, you have some versions of that in other states, and believe it or not, two of the key provisions we already have in statute. So what you would be doing is taking statutory changes, and you have an element of the population, and sometimes I think I'm getting there, that is concerned that because it's statutory, the legislature can come in at any time and change it. And the two things we have that are currently in statute are, one, the expenditure limitation, That's been in statute since 1973. Was effective in 74.
What is that limitation?
The limitation is exactly what the bills were that we had this session. It restricts spending to an increase in population and CPI. And so you'd be memorializing that provision, which is a key provision of any taxpayer's Bill of Rights in the Constitution. It's a policy statement, if you will. And the other provision that was in the bills that we had before the legislature that were not passed was the Rainy Day Fund. Now, interestingly enough, that was problematic in Colorado because they did not have one. And that's part of what created their problem.
And we have a very volatile tax base in terms of the revenues that produce on any given year. It can be 25% short or 25% high.
Exactly. And so I think there are some things you can do. One of them...
I'm missing something here. We had a 24% increase in spending this session, correct?
Oh, I think it was even a little bit more than that, Sam.
So where's the restriction that's in the statutes coming into play?
One of the problems you have with the existing current language that's in statute is, number one, it's not a rolling base. So the base went back to 74, but the other problem was as you remove expenditures from the general fund, which is what that limitation covers, the expenditure base is still in statute, is still in the calculation. You haven't removed that expenditure that might now be a trust fund,
okay, now
such as PERS, and that's something that needs to be cleaned up.
Well, now, folks on the other side of this, Senator Raju, I believe, and the governor who talked about this on the show, say that, first of all, if you have Tabor, why do you need the state government? But second of all, that what happens when there's a crisis?
Okay. One, rainy day fund is what helps the crisis. The rainy day fund should be more generous than it is. When we can afford to fund it, we should be funding it at a higher level.
Well, we could have funded it this time. We chose not to, and frankly, probably never will until we really get stuck once.
We kind of started to go back.
Isn't it about 350 million?
No, 200 million.
200 million is...
Well, it will be 200 million come next fiscal year, because there was an appropriation that was approved by the legislature for $71 million to get it up to the $200 million.
So where do you think it should be?
Well, I think we should be closer to the 10% of what the budget is that's approved, and this year that budget was $5.8 million. I'm sorry, billion dollars, and so I would like to see 10% of that amount.
$580 million.
Mm-hmm.
So let's ramp ahead. Nevada is one of the fastest growing states in the nation.
Right.
It has the fastest growing student population, K-12,
right.
Has the fastest growing college population, has the fastest growing Medicaid services network, and yet the most volatile revenue source of all time.
No. Go to the Rockefeller Institute site.
Okay.
After the 91 session, they started doing quarterly reports on what is volatile, and it's always been assumed that sales tax is volatile, and obviously we've all been there, because when it's good, it's very, very good, and when it's bad, it doesn't go minus. Generally, what it does is it doesn't give you the increases that you had the prior year. When Rockefeller was doing, and they still are, looking at the volatility of tax revenue sources to the states, it turned out that the income tax, the corporate income tax, was the most volatile tax you had. That in reality, and there's a real interesting narrative that was done by the team that analyzes the 50 states and their taxes, that for the perception of volatility that sales tax had, it turned out actually to be the most stable tax we had during that whole period across the United States, with a growth rate, a national average growth rate of 1.6%, which was totally different than corporate income tax, which dropped by 25.4%.
Let's take a break. We'll come back. More on this with Carole Vilardo. Always fascinating right after this on Nevada Newsmakers.
For a videotape copy of any Nevada Newsmakers program, call 775-857-2244. The tapes are $20 each, including shipping.
My family started this business 27 years ago.
We work hard to serve our customers and our community. but it's getting harder and harder to keep the doors open.
For example, our workers' comp is going through the roof. Isn't anyone on my side anymore?
The Retail Association of Nevada is. If you're a small business owner, we can cut your workers' comp by up to 50%, lobby for your interests, and keep you informed. Put us to work today.
Many of the materials we rely on every day come from the ground, and modern mining technology brings them to us cleaner and safer than ever before. To learn more about America's natural resources, visit nma.org, the National Mining Association.
If it's fun, it's here at the Peppermill, the $100,000 video-themed slot celebration, with more winners each week, 100 random winners every Monday and Wednesday, and more cash prizes, $6,000 random drawings every Friday, plus chances to win up to $1,000 in free slot play on Mr. Money's Challenge. You'll have more fun with the Peppermill's video-themed slot celebration, now worth over $100,000.
The slots that rock are at the Peppermill. Where are you winning?
Your best value in sight is here for you to see. From frames to lenses to eye exams, you're covered A to Z. Davis Optical, your best value in sight.
Davis Optical Centers, with 2 locations in Reno and Sparks.
Davis Optical, your best value in sight.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers with it. Hang on a second. I've got to reintroduce you. Chomping at the bit here. President of the Nevada Taxpayers Association, Carole Vilardo.
She's chomping at the bit. I'm chomping at the bit. I want to turn this into a debate. I'm going to try and do this in a question. In terms of volatility, though, when you take the recession years, we go in the tank.
No question.
And now with property taxes being capped, so that they're not going to accelerate during the good years at the level that they are. And of course, property taxes don't come to state government, at least in real large numbers, but they do support K-12. And to the extent that money doesn't grow in K-12, kindergarten through 12th grade education,
right,
then state government has to supply it. So while we do have good stability during reasonable years, when the recession hits us, we go in the shark tank.
So does every other state. And that's what pre-planning does. And that's the interesting thing in looking at Tabor and the things you might do so that you don't have the pitfalls that some other states have come with when they've enacted something like that. That's the reason I say it's important for the rainy day fund to be up. I believe that within that, when we have good years, that probably at least, well, in my opinion, 50% of what might be reverted from the DSA to the general fund should be reverted into a rainy day fund for education. One of the other things that I've been looking at in looking at Tabor, because it's going to be a fact of life, in my opinion. I think that the timing is just such, and what's gone on with tax increases and then with, the revenue accelerating to a degree has people questioning it. So what you'd like to see, if you're going to wind up with it, is something that would work, something that won't kill us. I think a 3-year rolling average. Yeah.
Something that will work and something that won't kill us. I like that combination.
Well, what can I tell you?
In Arizona,
it's something.
Just to put this on the table, in Arizona, and I do some work down there, as you know, this last legislative session in Arizona, they have many of these initiatives they've gone through. They have a $17 billion budget, and during this last legislative session, they were allowed to use their own discretion on $4 billion of it. The rest was all preordained or pre-assigned.
But that's one of the other issues.
Yes.
In addition to having what we have in statute right now, which is 1 year of population and CPI growth, I think you're better with a 3-year rolling average, because then I think you reduce the anomalies of extreme highs or extreme lows.
And that's based on my experience and yours. That would help a great deal.
And I think that's what you're looking for. I think the other thing that you have to do, which Arizona, Oregon, Colorado have all had a problem with, and California, and that is ballot box budgeting. And we have seen that in this state. And you have to have a provision within your Constitution that, at the very least, where you allow initiatives such as we do, and they're the right of the people, and no problem with that, but constitutionally, if you're going to go with an expenditure, such as we saw with K through 12, to the national average, you have to identify the revenue source. You can't just put it out there, because that's what's happened in Oregon that's created a problem. It's what's happened in California. So you have an expenditure limitation, but then you have ballot box budgeting with no comparable tax to cover this new expenditure, so you cut everything else. And that's where the problems are. So I think you can do balancing. I think that you've got to do a good hard look at each of the provisions.
Okay, looking at the economy in both southern and northern Nevada, but particularly in southern Nevada, we're not going to see any slowdown in the income as far as gaming taxes or sales taxes. Were you disappointed or surprised that we didn't see any rollback in the taxes?
I was disappointed. I thought it was a session with some missed opportunities, both on the expenditure side and on the taxing side.
Can you give us a couple of quick examples?
Yeah. The bank franchise tax. Now, we all know the banks, for whatever reason, whether you agree or disagree, was singled out last session. And so while everybody else, and we had an across-the-board modified business tax, the bank rate was 2%. But that wasn't bad enough. We then had to impose this franchise tax, which was $7,500 a year for each branch. Now, there was an attempt, and there were a couple of bills to repeal that. They were never even heard. We had a bill that was amended that at least gave the first branch, but that doesn't provide any real relief per se. It was an opportunity. I mean, the tax only raises something like $3 million. To eliminate that tax, we had more than enough surplus to do it. You know, the interesting thing about the banks is you want them healthy because they help finance.
But wasn't this in a way kind of a signal that other businesses, if there's times of trouble, are going to see their taxes raised up to that 2% level?
I think that's a definite problem. I think, you know, the fact that there was a reduction from 0.65 to 0.63, nothing done comparably for the banks on the payroll tax, is only 2 years. You know that if we come back in next session and there is money needed, there's not going to be a hope in the world of increasing that reduction or getting it to continue. We had an issue because of a bill last session on car rental tax. The way the bills were passed, there were multiple bills, created a problem with tax administration and compliance for car rental. It was an error. It should have been done properly last session. It wasn't. There was a bill in this session to correct it. The bill had a fiscal note, which I'll call hypothetical because they could not pinpoint it. Because of the fiscal note, even though the fiscal note was created because of how badly they did the bills last session, the bill was not passed. So we still have this hodgepodge of exemptions on the car rental tax. That's a missed opportunity to deal with policy instead of revenue. And I think we had a number of those issues that occurred.
And that's where we got to leave it. It's always a pleasure to have you here. You are welcome back as soon as you want to come.
Thank you.
We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers. When this lady speaks, everybody listens. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
For more than a decade, the Southern Nevada Water Authority has been helping the community embrace conservation as a way of life. That includes replacing more than 50 million square feet of grass with water-smart landscaping. During the worst drought on record, watering restrictions and tough landscaping codes have reduced the community's water use by billions of gallons, even as thousands of new residents were moving into Nevada. That's smart water management, and that's our promise to Nevada.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
So, who do you use for workers' comp?
Pro Group Management.
Ah, I've heard some good things about them.
You bet. Employee background checks, safety training, claim seminars. Oh, and here's the great part. If you have an issue, they work for you, not against you.
Sounds perfect. And expensive.
Well, that's the best part. They saved me 30%. I've heard they've saved others 50%.
Works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by employer links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and social security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're joined today by our Power Pundit panel. Wayne Frediani is here, Executive Director of the Nevada Franchised Auto Dealers Association. Fred Lokken is Professor of Political Science at TMCC. And Chris Wicker is the Chairman of the Washoe County Democratic Party. Welcome to all of you.
Well, Chris, I'll start with you. Just because I love to play partisan politics with Chris. Senator Ensign, Senator Reid had a joint press conference this week announcing the energy bill and talking about how it was good for Nevada. And it's got to be tough when you want to run somebody against Senator Ensign that he's up there with Reid. How is that going to impact what you guys are looking at for candidate recruitment? And for all of you guys, can you even bother recruiting anybody against John Ensign?
Well, I think they're two separate things. I think the energy bill, as proposed by the Senate, is actually a very good bill. Kind of came out of there because they do a ton of money for alternative energy other than fossil fuels.
Yep.
You compare that to the House Republican bill, which has virtually nothing for alternative energy. Almost all of its $8 billion goes to deep drilling or other fossil fuels. So the Senate energy bill, and I hope that's the one that survives, is a good bill. And I'm glad that Senator Ensign is supporting it. It does take away one of the issues that we could have hammered him with if he was supporting the House bill. The House bill is so awful, it would have been a good lever. But I'm glad it's good for the country if the Senate bill passes.
Wayne, would the only reason a Democrat would run against John Ensign be just to get name recognition in a campaign?
Oh, that's tough.
But I don't think that's the case. I think Senator Ensign's going to be pretty formidable from a fundraising standpoint. I think he's going to be able to raise quite a bit of money, and that would be tough, I think, for any Democratic challenger to overcome. And I think Senator Ensign is doing a pretty decent job of representing Nevada.
You know, how you... Well, Fred,
I was going to say that friendship, though, between Ensign and Reid is phenomenal, especially given their very special history. And frankly, I think it should be a role model to the rest of the country, that you can be from different sides of the aisle, but frankly, if you're there working not only for the country but for your state, it's to your advantage to have a relationship and work together.
Well, you know, I think it has been good for Nevada in many ways, but it makes it hellacious to run against him because there has been so much cooperation. I will say that Ensign has done plenty of things to run against.
And Senator Reid all but endorsed John Ensign in the last campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, he did it on a morning show interview at another television station with me. So,
well, you know, Senator Reid is the leading Democrat in the state. You really need him to get out there beating the bushes for an opponent of John Ensign, and if he's not doing it, it makes it very hard.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it.
I think it's real effective to have two senators that are working that close together on different parties. You don't always see that across the country, but you're seeing that, and I think that's a positive for Nevada in a whole.
Well, we know that Reid has been very, very effective for Nevada, and I think, in all honesty, Ensign's done some good things too. He's done plenty of bad things on a national level, but...
Well, I think we need to cover our bases, too. The parties switch power, and it's good to have a Republican and a Democrat.
Well, I think the other thing that no one's brought up here today is that Senator Ensign looks like he's going to end up being the number 5 senator in the Republican Party. So that's a very strong leadership position from both sides of the aisle for Nevada, which I think is a good
Pretty
thing.
strong for an individual who's only been there one term.
Yeah.
That in itself is amazing. We would like to talk to Senator Ensign about how he accomplished that. And
despite that, we would still like to run a Democrat and beat him.
and do you want to put any names on the table?
Not yet.
We've still got the begging process in place.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is rough again, Sam.
Let's change topics here. It is driving me crazy. In 49 states in this country, we have a shield law for reporters. and we don't have a federal shield law. And at this point, the legal system is going out of control here. Matthew Cooper of Time magazine was threatened with jail, along with Judith Miller of the New York Times. Judith Miller never wrote the story. She just did some interviews based on the story, and the judge in this case is trying to get her to give up her sources, and at this point she has not done so and is likely not to do so, according to William Safire, also of the New York Times. Fred, you were just saying that Time magazine has now decided to give up the information that the judge wants.
Yes.
But isn't it time for us to have, because the thing that's the problem is that it's already going on into other courts. There's a District of Columbia court who's following up the Supreme Court by doing the same thing of threatening to imprison reporters. Isn't this just fundamentally wrong, Wayne?
Sam, I would like nothing better.
Did you change your name to Wayne? That's fine.
Oh, okay. Well, I would like.
attorney.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I would like nothing better than to discover who the son of a gun, vindictive son of a gun, was of the administration.
But Robert Novak, the man who knows, is not being charged with it.
But we have to protect the press. We have to protect the press. We have to.
I agree. I think that it is amazing that this has gone as far as it has. People aren't going to give up their anonymous sources, I don't think, and reporters need to be protected in some respect. And
well, why isn't Congress
we wouldn't hear some of the stories we hear if that was the case.
Yeah, you'd have deep throat.
You wouldn't know what's going on in
and
some
why aren't
cases.
they going after Woodward and Bernstein? I mean, yeah.
Statute of limitations.
Yeah, exactly. And nor did they ever.
But why did the Congress and the President were so quick to act in the case of Terry Schiavo? And by comparison with this, which I think is a far bigger issue, and yet we saw the President flying back overnight to sign a bill, the Congress in action all night to get the thing taken care of, isn't this a far more important situation?
Well, the extreme right wing is not pushing it, so that's why Bush didn't act. They were pushing it in Terry Schiavo, and he flew across the country to sign that stupid law. But the right wing is not pushing it.
Terry Schiavo touched lives. I mean, it's not like there's. I mean, being on the journalistic side, I understand it, but the choice of a family fight and how it could happen in everybody's household touched lives, and I can understand the advocacy on that part. But it's frustrating that here's something that is going to silence the media.
But
that's basically wrong.
I don't know.
It's critical. It's critical.
It is absolutely critical, and it's insane, and it needs to be changed. We need a federal shield law. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
High-tech companies demand perfect world amenities. They require clean, reliable power, state-of-the-art fiber optic communications, and clean water sources. In a perfect world, companies would have immediate access to rail and interstate freeways. There would be 4-lane expressways that shorten shipping times and provide convenient commute routes for valued employees. Well, the future is now, and it's here. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevadans.
And coming up next week?
Oh, we have a presidential hour with Clay Jenkins. We also have Senator Harry Reid and Senator Bob Beers.
We'll see you then. Have a great holiday weekend.